this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson, live this evening from WGCU in Fort Myers, Florida. Now, this is our second show, but just like in our first show last week, DJ Anthony Valadez is with us. He is our house DJ. Hi, Anthony.
Hey, Jeremy, how's it going?
It's going very well, and we have a few things to talk about. First of all, for the listeners who are new to this show, what we're trying to do is bring voices from the vast middle of the country into the national conversation. People who live in the middle are so important in our politics, but are so often ignored by the media. Now, last week, we were in my hometown of Urbana, Illinois. We were taking your calls about the most important issue to you heading into the election, and our phones were absolutely jammed, Anthony, the entire time. I just want to listen to a few of the voicemails that we received during the show.
Hi, Jeremy. My name is Jeff. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Hi, it's Julia Walters. I'm in Virginia.
This is Grant in Iowa.
Hello, my name is DJ. I am in Missouri.
Hi, my name is Lisa Becker. I am an OBGYN doc in Denver, Colorado.
Hi, my name is Madeline Kelly. I live in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And my number one issue for the election this year is climate change.
And relative to the election, my biggest concern would be inflation.
I'm very concerned, of course, about reproductive freedom.
And I'm a social and fiscal conservative. But my primary issue this November is democracy. Thanks for the conversation.
So many calls, Anthony. And if you can't get through at 844-4-MIDDLE because the lines are jammed, just leave a message for us. We're listening to them all. But let's get back to the middle. Now, there is no doubt that Urbana, Illinois, where we were last week, my hometown, is in the middle of the country. And there's no doubt that Kansas City, where we're going to be next week, is in the middle of the country. But some people have been asking me, wait a minute, Fort Myers, Florida, that is not the middle. Now, I don't know if you've been to this part of the country, but let me give you a little geography. Fort Myers is actually due south of Ohio. In fact, I-75 goes all the way from Cincinnati down to Fort Myers. And perhaps as a result, there are a lot of Midwesterners here, retirees, vacationers. But also, this is a booming part of the country. Fort Myers was actually one of the 15 fastest growing cities in America in the last census. And more people moved here from Illinois than from any other state in the last few years. But most importantly, Anthony, to the point of this show, we are trying to elevate the voices of Americans who are often left out of our national media. Now, there is one more thing we should say. It has been less than a month since Hurricane Ian slammed into this part of the country, one of the deadliest storms ever to hit Florida. Thankfully, this radio station where we're broadcasting tonight is a fortress and was actually able to house some of the other media organizations in this area during the hurricane. But the cleanup continues, and we want to thank our friends at WGCU for hosting us given the circumstances. Okay, here's what we're asking tonight. How is climate change affecting your community, and what do you think elected officials should do about it? Anthony, what is our number?
Well, the number is 844-4MIDDLE. Once again, that's 844-464-3353.
Thank you, Anthony. And remember, as we have this conversation, I want to hear from you, whatever your point of view. There is no condescension here. We are going to have respect for one another and a civil conversation, even when we disagree. Let me bring in our guests tonight. We've got ABC 7 Chief Meteorologist John Patrick, who has been doing the weather here in Southwest Florida since 2005, John.
It's been a long time, yeah.
And was this storm, Hurricane Ian, the most powerful that you've ever covered here?
It's definitely the biggest and most powerful that I've covered here. I came here in 2005. We had Hurricane Wilma that year that hit near Marco Island, Cape Romano. And then we had Hurricane Irma just 5 years ago, and that one was a terrible storm that also came on shore on Marco Island. We had, of course, Ian, which took an eerily similar path to Hurricane Charlie back in 2004. Hurricane Charlie was a Category 4, but the size of that storm was much smaller than Ian. So with this storm, we had more widespread damage than we did with Charlie.
And you could see it even now as you drive around to certain areas here. There's debris on the sides of the roads, and many people, including some that we've met in the last several days, have lost their homes, or everything that they've owned has been destroyed. So, John, thank you for being here. Debra Javeline is our other guest today from South Bend, Indiana, professor of political science at Notre Dame, who has a special focus on climate change. Tell us a little bit about that, Debra.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm a specialist in the politics of climate change, actually. And so I look at the recent devastation in Florida through a political lens. And I was really interested in, Jeremy, your opening where you said that many of the people who moved to Fort Myers came from the Midwest. I think they're going in the wrong direction. I think that we need to have a national conversation about where people live and where is safe to live, especially in this time of rebuilding. We're about to pour tremendous resources into infrastructure. Are we going to do the very same thing that got us into this mess in the first place, or are we going to have sort of a big rethink, a big national conversation about safe locations in a changing climate?
Well, I'm sure that our listeners are going to have some thoughts on that. Let's go to one of the callers that has come in, and our number again, 844-4MIDDLE. Haley is in Fort Myers, right here in Southwest Florida. Haley, I don't have to ask you how climate change is affecting you, but do you attribute the hurricane that just hit to being stronger because of climate change, or what did you want to talk about?
I'm not a scientist, but I believe in the evidence that they've presented. So yes, I agree that it's due to, the impact of our behavior as humans that is causing the changes in the climate, causing these big hurricanes.
Did you see damage because of Hurricane Ian?
Not personally.
Not personally. What do you think the government ought to do, given that you believe that humans are making climate change worse and are causing climate change?
Well, one thing is to contribute towards education about these things and reaching to people who are maybe unable to be educated on this and bring up, awareness.
What do you think, Haley, about what Debra Javeline just said about how people that are moving from, let's say, the Midwest to Florida are moving in the wrong direction, that people shouldn't be locating in areas where they're at such risk from major hurricanes?
Well, there's risk everywhere, so I don't agree with that thought.
Haley, thank you for your call. Debra Javeline, what about that? The fact that there is risk everywhere. People face risks of wildfires in California. People face risks of hurricanes here, tornadoes in the Midwest. What about that?
Well, she's not wrong. Climate change poses risks everywhere. It's a global phenomenon. There are relatively better and worse places to live. So given sea level rise, for example, we know that coastal living is unsustainable. There are places where the scientists from all different disciplines, climate scientists, oceanographers, are projecting levels of sea that the sea will rise that will make current coastal areas unlivable. That may be similar with the wildfire areas in the West, but relatively speaking, there are safer places here in the Midwest. Sure, we will get extreme weather. We might get inland flooding. Agriculture may occasionally suffer from droughts. But the current multi-billion-dollar devastation that we are seeing, that's primarily happening where you are, right? So the costliest disasters in U.S. history are happening from Katrina and Harvey and Maria and Sandy and Ida and Irma. You're not going to find that level of devastation in the upper Midwest.
Debra, let me ask John Patrick about that, because I imagine a lot of your viewers would not agree that they shouldn't be living here in Florida.
I mean, we're living in paradise, as everybody says. You know, we live where you vacation. And I know that over the past several years, especially after Hurricane Andrew, the building codes here in Florida have gotten a lot stricter than they used to be. And a lot of the structures that were annihilated in Hurricane Ian were older buildings. 5 years ago, when we had Hurricane Irma, the storm surge in a town in Collier County, just south of here, Everglades City, they had about 9 feet of storm surge, and they had about that again with Hurricane Ian. They were just about finished with the rebuilding process 5 years later down there after Hurricane Irma. And one of the things that a lot of the homes down there had to be revised as far as how they were built, they had to elevate them. So the first floor of living area is what would normally be the second floor. So you see a lot of these houses that are on stilts. Mm-hmm. Now, you'll have like a garage or a storage on that first level or whatever, but they are elevated as far as the living area, so they're able to handle storm surge better than they used to.
I just want to get to one call quickly before we go to break here. Jay in Minneapolis, let's hear from you. What do you have to say?
Yeah, I guess I just had two things. I've kind of watched everything unfold over the last kind of decade. I think that a lot of the policies that have been pushed forth have exacerbated inflation and also kind of led to worse farming practices that do create a lot of over-reliance on water and the use of that, such as ethanol. And I think that we're leading a lot of short-term policies that exacerbate everything into the future. When all of this should have been done, so much could have been done 10 years ago, right? So we keep trying to put Band-Aids and patches on things, but all of these policies and all these building codes are just done after the fact. And it just keeps leading to more and more and more, and it just builds up. So how can we try to address?
Right. A Band-Aid approach is what's upsetting you on this issue. Jay, thank you very much for your call. Again, our number is 844-4MIDDLE. You can also reach out to us at listentothemiddle.com. And we'll be right back in a moment.
It's an Olympics you'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kidd with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle from beautiful northern Italy with very special guests every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
to be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here with my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
If you're just tuning in live, I'm Jeremy Hobson. This is The Middle. We are a new national call-in show focused on bringing voices from the middle of the country into the national conversation. By the way, if you miss any of the show or you want to hear more, you can check out our podcast, The Middle with Jeremy Hobson, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you can't find it, you can go to listentothemiddle.com. We'll link you to it there. My guests tonight, Notre Dame professor Debra Javeline and meteorologist John Patrick of ABC7 here on the Florida Gulf Coast. We're asking you about climate change, how it's affecting you, where you live, and what you want the government to do about it. 844-4MIDDLE is our number. Let's go to Tim, who is in Southeast Michigan. Hello, Tim.
Hello. Hi.
Hi. Tell us, how is climate change affecting you? What do you want the U.S. government to do about it?
Well, I want us to get on board the nuclear renaissance, because our portion of electric energy from nuclear fission is declining because we're retiring our reactor fleet and we have only 2 reactors now under construction. I think that nuclear fission provides reliable, round-the-clock electric power, unlike certain renewable technologies I could mention. And because of that feature, I believe that nuclear dominance for energy production is inevitable. And the sooner humanity gets on board, the less profound will be the damage to Earth's ecosphere, which I keep an eye on because I am always trying to transplant native species to displace the invasive species in my yard. So I watch this kind of carefully, and I think that a nuclear renaissance is going to occur and is even now beginning, but our country is not on board. I'd like to contrast that with China.
Well, and actually, at this moment, though, we do have more nuclear reactors in operation than China. We have the most in the entire world, although it's less than it was 10 years ago in this country. Are you worried at all, Tim, about what happened in Japan with Fukushima or the nuclear disasters that have happened? Does that scare you away from nuclear at all?
It does not. Why? Because first, where to begin on that? That was a outrageously miserable, incompetent decision to put the generating equipment underneath the ground level in the basement, where it's flooded.
Right.
But anyway, setting that aside, they should never have been building in that floodplain to a tsunami location anyway, as they were warned through the centuries. By the way, not a single person was injured or killed by nuclear radiation at Fukushima. Many people died in the evacuation, but none from radiation.
Okay, so Tim, you're not worried about that. Let me go to Debra Javeline, our guest, on what you're bringing up, because actually we've gotten some messages online about nuclear as well. Debra, what about that? This is obviously a controversial topic. Otherwise, we'd probably have gone all nuclear at this point. But what do you think about the people that say that's the way out of the climate crisis?
awfully concerned about timelines. I view us as in a climate emergency. I think the climate emergency has arrived, and I think that we needed to be addressing climate change yesterday. And I think that most people who are gung-ho about nuclear underestimate the time frame that it would take to turn everything into nuclear, to power our economy by nuclear energy, particularly because there is not public support for doing so. So you can complain about that, but that's the reality in our country. Some of us of good, will defend that and say, here's my reasons for not supporting nuclear. I will just say, just as an objective reporting of the status of public opinion, you're not going to get that support, which means you're not going to get that kind of political support in our legislature. So for me, it's kind of a non-starter, and that's not even getting into the cost of nuclear, which is exorbitant. So where all that fund is going to come from, by the time we could get agreement on that, the climate emergency has plunged us even deeper, and we're going to be seeing Ian's, left and right. So I think that we have to look for our solutions more in the very immediate future.
Let's go to Justin, who's calling from Philadelphia. Justin, you're lucky because you're the first call from a coastal city that has been on this show. I said that we're not shutting out the coasts altogether. So here you are as a perfect example of that. Justin, welcome to the middle.
Thank you.
Tell us how is climate change affecting you? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak a little bit to, kind of how the conversation gets, narrated or framed, at least, by the government. And I really feel, sometimes talking about it as this big global issue is just too abstract, and big for the everyday person to get. And you know what? I'm interested in how my local, county level, state level politicians can show me, climate change action that just, directly, impacts me, and the way they can kind of frame that change around, everyday life, so rather than talking about it as this big global challenge, I want to see my local politicians talking about, how to get me, more local food, or how to give me access to that, or, how to create healthier air, or, how to, address human health issues, our energy independence. And all these things come from reducing our carbon footprint. But, we can think about them as localized issues that improve our quality of life. And I think that could be more effective than thinking about it as this abstract, enormous global challenge.
Let me take that to John Patrick, our guest. John, you're here in Southwest Florida. You just dealt with Hurricane Ian. I wonder what you think about what Justin just said right there, that maybe bringing it to the local level makes more sense to get people to wrap their heads around what needs to be done.
Well, for example, here in Southwest Florida, we've been talking about the effects of climate change on our newscast for a long time. And one of the ways that we have tied it in to the local area is the economy. So much of our economy relies on tourism and fishing and the like. And with climate change, temperatures are on the rise, mostly as we get those higher temperatures. When we get our sea breeze thunderstorms, for example, in the afternoon during the summertime, we've been noticing more heavy rain events out of those thunderstorms. I mean, some afternoons we'll get 4, 5, 6 inches of rain out of a thunderstorm. And all that water runs through the ground. And at certain times of the year, we've got fertilizer in the ground as well. And all that gets shoved into our rivers and estuaries as runoff, and that gives you things like blue-green algae, which can result in fish kills, which if you've ever been to the beach when there's a fish kill there, it's not pretty. It doesn't smell pretty.
There's a real concern about that right now, right, because of all the rain that came from Hurricane Ian.
And the same thing happened after Hurricane Irma. The years after Hurricane Irma, we had some pretty bad algae and red tide and fish kills and all that. And that's the concern now after Ian, is that we're going to see all that again with all that heavy rain that we had. There were parts of just north of here in Sarasota County. They got almost a foot and a half of rain. And that wasn't even storm surge or anything. That was just rain from the hurricane.
Debra Javeline, what do you think about what Justin was bringing up there, that maybe talking about, the IPCC and the international climate action and all of that stuff is a little too abstract and that we should be focusing it more locally?
I think it's a great thought, but I'm actually curious, who are the politicians talking about the IPCC even in the abstract? So I guess I view the bigger problem as the climate emergency is not being treated as an emergency either abstractly or locally. And that instead we're talking about higher gas prices. And we talk about higher gas prices as if that's some separate issue and worthy of complaint. And we can have it all. We want our gas prices to be low and take climate action at the same time. And we don't have political leaders who are translating this story well. So I agree with the caller that there's not a good that the climate situation is not being explained well by our politicians. But I think that partly we constituents are to blame. I mean, we are asking for things from our political leaders that are undeliverable. You can't have it both ways. You can't keep using cheap fossil fuels and try to mitigate against climate change.
Let's take a listen to some of the calls that have come in, because some people aren't able to get through. They go to the voicemail. So our great producer puts together a quick montage, and I want to listen to it right now. Some of the people that have called and left messages for us about how climate change is impacting them.
Hi, this is Dennis in Two Rivers, Wisconsin. And I figure if people don't believe climate change is really happening, or if it's not really happening because of human interaction or human actions, we should still stop putting so much pollution out, because it's just going to hurt us.
Hey, boss, I'm in Denver. Well, I'm actually out of Meade, Colorado. They want to really push our electric cars. I admit I'm a proud owner of one. I love it. We really want to expand the use of these electric cars. Why don't we have charging stations at the rest areas, at least in future plans?
This is Joanne Delgard in Tecumseh, Michigan. Other than increasingly frequent episodes of wonky weather, climate change has not affected me greatly, not like people in coastal regions. What I'd like to see the government do about it is, first of all, get the EPA a good set of dentures to make up for all the teeth that have been knocked or yanked out of it. Thank you for listening.
Good set of dentures. I love that. Let's go to Utah. Carol is on line 5. Carol in Utah. Hello.
Hi, how are you? How are you guys doing tonight?
We're doing great. And tell us how climate change is impacting you and your community.
Sure. So, I've lived in Utah my whole life, so I've watched the Great Salt Lake slowly recede, and it's gotten pretty significant. And we've seen so much less snowfall. We've had pretty significant drought. So that's been something, when you're thinking about, I'm in, approaching my late 20s, thinking about having kids, having a family. It's intimidating, thinking about what's happening around me.
Would you actually not have kids because of the threat of climate change? Carol?
I was in a... Can you hear me?
I can hear you a little bit, yeah. Would you not have kids because of the threat of climate change? I think we lost Carol there. Let's actually, let me ask you about that, Debra Javeline, because you look at sort of the risks that people decide to take. Have you heard about that? People deciding they don't want to have children because they're worried about the future of the planet?
My students talk about it. Yeah, my students talk about it all the time. Not as a firm decision, but as a consideration, as particularly the ones who are aware that if everyone lived as Americans lived, we would need 2, 3, 4 planets. And so they ponder their consumerism and whether it is moral or ethical to how do you live responsibly on this planet. So I don't know that they have answers, but it's definitely a discussion among young people.
John Patrick, do you ever hear that?
I have not heard that as far as people considering whether or not to have children because of climate change. But it's, I was just sitting here listening to all this, and it's certainly something to think about. I've got 2 nieces. One is a freshman in college, and the other one is 16 right now. And I was just thinking, what kind of planet are we going to have 20, 30, 40 years from now? As far as, are we going to have these stronger hurricanes? Are we going to have droughts and all that goes along with that?
Let's go to another call. Michael Collins is calling in from Farmington Hills, Michigan. Michael, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hi. What did you want to talk about, Michael?
I wanted to just say that renewables plus storage is now the lowest cost energy in the world and costs less than fossil or nuclear. So the storage makes renewables 24 hours like baseload. And investing in storage makes more sense than expensive nuclear or even fossil. We can keep the fossil and let it attrition out and age out. Rocky Mountain Institute has already discussed this years ago. It's the most sensible approach because you don't have to keep saying climate change this or climate change that. It happens to be the lowest cost for even those who don't believe climate change exists.
Have you gone solar yourself, Michael?
No, because I rent, but I live part of the year in California, and I charge my car from 9 to 3 because of the electricitymaps.com that shows when usage is highest. And 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., it's mostly solar. And you can see that on the California Grids app or electricitymaps.com. And I charge at night when the afternoon peak is over. So being a good grid citizen is something that most EV owners are already doing. Mm-hmm. And adding vehicle-to-grid storage, vehicle-to-home storage, mechanical batteries, chemical batteries, thermal batteries is going to be the future and will be the shock absorbers that the grid needs. Take wind and solar when it's not needed and release it when it is. Also, the low-loss DC lines that the federal government is proposing to take renewables from where they are generated in the unpopulated areas and transport them to where the population centers are that don't necessarily have renewable energy is going to help levelize that as well. So we can keep the existing fossil, keep the existing nuclear. Mm-hmm. Attrition will allow it to age out and provide fill-in power. And we can depend primarily on renewables plus storage.
All right. Well, Michael, thank you for your call. I actually want to ask you, John Patrick, because we are in the Sunshine State here in Florida. I haven't seen, given that, as much solar electricity on the top of roofs as I would have expected.
We're kind of headed in that direction. I know over the past, I would say at least 5 years, there's been more of a push to go solar. And there's been a lot more, just me personally at my house, there have been a lot more door-to-door salespeople with solar. We actually have the first solar city in the entire country here in Southwest Florida. It's just to the north of where we're sitting in Fort Myers. It's called Babcock Ranch, and it's an entire city that has solar power. They have these gigantic solar power farms, and they were one of the areas during the hurricane that did not lose power because it's all solar.
Debra Javeline, I got to say, I have solar and I love my solar, and it immediately on day one made my electricity bill lower than it would have been, even with the payment for the solar panels. But the incentives are really getting a lot better than they used to be for solar across the country.
Yeah, and I guess we also should be applauding the Inflation Reduction Act, an amazing, $369 billion finally devoted to climate change. So it took us a really long time to get here, but we did get here. And so those incentives should only be improving. And I guess I would just caution that the main obstacle is the fossil fuel industry, which continues to pump our campaign finance system full of they're the obstructioners, the obstructionists. They're the reason that we are still facing challenges going fully to renewables.
We're getting some comments online at listentothemiddle.com. Paula in Milwaukee says her region is not ready for the coming influx of climate refugees. Kate tweets from Missouri, I'm very concerned about the warming of the oceans. And we'll be right back in a moment.
Olympics. You'll never forget. Prime time in Milan. The moments.
Chloe Kim with the gold medal flex.
The stars.
Ilya Malinin.
Out of this world.
The spectacle. From beautiful northern Italy. With very special guests. Every night of the Olympics. Experience the world's biggest show. Prime time in Milan. Tonight, 8/7 Central on NBC and Peacock.
Welcome to the A Building. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba. It's 1969. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. had both been assassinated, and Black America was at a breaking point. Rioting and protests broke out on an unprecedented scale.
In Atlanta, Georgia, at Martin's alma mater, Morehouse College, the students had their own protest. It featured two prominent figures in Black history, Martin Luther King Sr. and a young student, Samuel L. Jackson.
To be in what we really thought was a revolution. I mean, people were dying.
1968, the murder of Dr. King, which traumatized everyone.
The FBI had a role in the murder of a Black Panther leader in Chicago.
This story is about protest. It echoes in today's world far more than it should, and it will blow your mind.
Listen to the A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Ryder Strong, and I have a new podcast called The Red Weather.
It was many and many a year ago in a kingdom by the sea.
In 1995, my neighbor, Anna Trainer, disappeared from a commune.
It was hard to wrap your head around. It was nature and trees and praying and drugs.
So no, I am not your guru.
And back then, I lied to my parents, I lied to police, I lied to everybody.
There were years, Ryder, where I could not say your name.
I've decided to go back to my hometown in Northern California, interview my friends, family, talk to police, journalists, whomever I can, to try to find out what actually happened.
Isn't it a little bit weird that they obsess over hippies in the woods and not the obvious boyfriend?
They have had this case for 30 years.
I'll teach you sons of to come around here with my wife. Boom, boom.
This is The Red Weather. Listen to The Red Weather on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is The Middle. I'm Jeremy Hobson. We are live from WGCU in Fort Myers, Florida, a place that less than a month ago was devastated by Hurricane Ian, one of the strongest hurricanes ever to hit Florida. And I'm joined this evening by John Patrick, a meteorologist, chief meteorologist at ABC 7 here on the Florida Gulf Coast, and Notre Dame political science professor Debra Javeline, who also focuses on climate change. Our number is 844-4-MIDDLE. Let's go to another call. This is Tyler in Salt Lake City. Tyler, we just heard a little bit about the Salt Lake drying up, but tell us, how, are you seeing that? Are you seeing evidence of that yourself as well?
Oh, yeah, definitely. We are getting toxic dust storms from all the industrial waste that settled into the bed, and now it's getting picked up. But I think more to what I want to maybe try to direct is I like the investment in nuclear, but maybe we could search for an alternative to our natural gas, because we use a lot of that in the wintertime. We obviously smell the methane leaking out of our homes when we're walking by the gas pipes. So maybe looking into geothermal would be a viable option, because I know we're increasing our solar, but, you know, when the snow covers up the solar panels.
Mm-hmm. Well, and natural gas, by the way, the U.S. is the leader among the natural gas producers in the world. It set an all-time high for natural gas production in the year 2021. 23% of global natural gas production came from the U.S., ahead of Russia and even the Middle East. But that doesn't make you happy, Tyler.
I mean, I understand the use for it and the benefits it has versus gasoline, but for regions, mountainous regions specifically, where our winters get really, really cold, obviously it gets to be very worrisome, because we get the inversions that get over our basin areas, not just in the winter, but in the summertime. So we're facing a 1-2 punch of record 90-day heat waves in our summer times, and obviously it's hurting our lungs. It's causing more cases of asthma in a lot of folks who are already sensitive.
Debra Javeline, we've actually heard from several people online about the issues, the health issues that are caused by climate change, that in fact, maybe there should be less focus on the rising sea levels and more on the things that are hurting us directly, that are the pollution that is hurting us. What do you think about that?
So I guess we're talking about messaging. Is that what you mean? Like what would get it to resonate more? I actually don't know. I've heard that's been around for quite some time. Actually, like if you could just convince people to care about local pollution, then maybe they would start caring more about climate change. But I still return to this idea that people have to be willing to sacrifice, and that for me the bigger issue is that people like their lifestyles, and even the ones who call in and say, I'm really concerned and I really want to do something about climate change. The second that you mention a slight inconvenience, a slight change that they might need to make, then all of a sudden you get pushback. So I think that for me is a bigger hurdle than just trying to tweak the messaging.
That's Debra Javeline, a professor of political science at Notre Dame. Let's go to another call from this area. Dan in Marco Island is on the line. Dan, were you impacted by the hurricane?
Hi, good evening. Yes, we were. We had quite a bit of storm surge where I live in Marco Island, and it was frightening, and it was a mythical beast, as we say down here, because we've heard about the storm surge, but we've never seen it, and we finally did.
So what do you want the government to do about climate change, or do you attribute the storm to climate change?
Well, I think I've heard of recent commentary that storms seem to be getting stronger, and I don't disagree with that. It seems like we've had a few pretty strong storms in the last 5 years in Southwest Florida. But spending money on climate change has to be, in my opinion, tempered with how effective it's going to be if no one else, if other economies, India, China, Russia aren't playing by our rules, are the taxes we're going to pay and the costs we're going to pay to have this green, environment, at least in our country, is it going to cripple our economy and lead to bigger problems. So I don't know if spending money on climate change is necessarily
right.
a good idea. I think it needs a lot more studying.
Dan, thank you for your call. John Patrick, let me go to you on that because this is an attitude I think in this part of Florida especially you probably hear a lot of, which is should we be hurting our economy if that's what it's going to do to spend more money to deal with rising sea levels, with climate change, especially if, and we saw this today in international climate reporting, a lot of other countries are not spending what they've said they're going to spend to deal with climate change.
It's definitely a global solution. How do you get all these countries on board to combat this? That I can't answer you, but we're seeing the effects of it. And right now it's ruining our economy. I mean, we can't have tourists on our beaches. Boats can't go out there fishing because we've got all the debris from the storm, including oil and gas and whatever leaked out of all the boats.
Now, weeks later, you can't go onto the beaches.
Yes, there's advisories along our beaches to stay out of the water because of all the contaminants that are in it. I mean, we aired a story last night, I think it was either last night or 2 nights ago, of during the storm, porta potties literally flying during the storm, ending up in the rivers. So you've got what's in porta potties, you've got that in the rivers and in the waterways now too. So there's still weeks later an advisory to not go out of the water or not go into the water, I should say. And it's going to take a while to get all that cleaned up.
Let's go to Barbara, who is in Scottsdale, I assume, Arizona. Barbara,
yes.
Hello, welcome.
Yes, hello.
Yes, and tell us what's on your mind.
Two things. First of all, we have heat that starts at 100 degrees in May, and it continues through October. It's getting longer, and it's impacting a lot of people. The energy bills are higher. Secondly, I'd like to just share, as a former education professor, when I did study abroad in Italy with students, as of 2018, the Ministry of Education in Italy mandated teaching about climate change in the curriculum for all the children. We're having challenges with that, and I would like to see a focus on teaching the aspects of climate change that are economic and that are impacting health and livelihood. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that call. Debra Javeline, you are in the education field, so what do you think about that? Are we not teaching about climate change enough, especially in the schools?
My part. I keep offering new classes, but I would love to link her point with the point of the former caller, where the suggestion was that we either have to address the environment or address the economy. Anybody who takes classes on at the intersection of sustainability and climate change and economics will tell you that addressing climate change can be a win-win. It can be a great thing for the economy. There are all these opportunities out there. There are growth fields in renewables, for example, and energy efficiency and new technologies. So yes, I totally agree with the caller that we should be teaching climate change in schools. I think we're increasingly doing that, but not even just the basics of how the climate is changing, but really what to do in a changing climate, and showing our students the kind of world that they could live in and where they could make contributions.
Let's go to Shannon in Beaufort, South Carolina, a place I know how to pronounce because I've been there, Shannon. So welcome to the show, and tell us what's on your mind about climate change in your community.
I want to sort of mention the idea of housing developments, new housing developments, how they clear cut all of the trees before they build the houses, and as a result, all of those houses are exposed to direct sunlight in the summer. And of course, they're forced to use more air conditioning to compensate for that.
So what do you think that the government ought to do?
Well, I mean, I guess there's a question of sort of the economic concept of externalities. You know, the companies that are building these houses, they're not having to pay for those direct costs, the air conditioning costs, but they're definitely not having to pay for the indirect cost to the society related to more energy requirements. So I guess you could sort of make an argument that governmental, local, or state could sort of have a legitimate reason to talk about at least regulating these companies' buildings, their building projects, in light of the fact that it's inevitable that they're going to lead to more.
We've got it there, Shannon, and we're really getting a good view, John Patrick, at the wide range of phone connections tonight. I guess not many people make voice calls anymore, but we're hearing all kinds of different kinds of them. Debra Javeline, though, I do know that you have focused some of your research on the measures that people take in the houses that they live in to protect them against the elements, against the weather, against the climate.
Yes, this caller was concerned about energy efficiency, but my research has much more to do with retrofitting for resilience to protect against hurricanes, or I don't do wildfire research, but it would be the same idea that our homes should be our fortresses, right? And at the beginning of this conversation, somebody had talked about building codes, which are fantastic when they are enacted and when they are implemented. But that isn't true for a lot of the Atlantic and Gulf Coast states. And even in the places where the building codes currently are rigorous, they only apply to new construction, which in most that's about less than 10% of the houses that are in existence or will be in existence. So we've got a real problem on our hands with the 90-something% of houses that are neither energy efficient nor built to withstand the disasters that might befall them. And so to the extent that we need again, a rethink of what we do with our properties. We need to think about retrofitting and perhaps mandating retrofitting. If you're going to insist in living in harm's way, is it really responsible to live in a home that has openings, doors, windows, roofs that are not built to current code? And when your home gets destroyed, you're probably not insured. You probably most people, even the ones who should have flood insurance, don't have flood insurance. The state is now stepping in to provide insurance for wind damage. All of this is incredibly unsustainable. So for people who want to dig in their heels and say, but this is where I want to live, okay, but are you willing to incur the risk? So when something happens the next time, who pays the cost? We need to have a conversation about that. I'm not saying I necessarily have an answer, but I am saying that I think that we only have this conversation after the fact, when everybody's got their hand out and saying, well, of course, I'm a victim now. Of course, you should help me. And I do sympathize with people who are in that plight. But we know it's going to happen again and again and again. So if we can anticipate this, we should be taking proactive measures.
Let's go to Barbara in Chicago, Illinois. Barbara, welcome. And tell us what's on your mind.
Well, I am wondering about how much war, the cost of war, the destruction of war, the destruction of property and everything else is contributing to climate change.
All right. What makes you focus on that as a cause of climate change? Barbara?
Pardon me, why am I focusing on that?
Why are you focused on war as and its impact on climate change? I'm just curious.
Well, I've read about the impact of war on climate, on environmental destruction and contributing to climate change, and it's just so pervasive in our society.
Barbara, thank you for that call. Debra Javeline, I guess I'll go to you on that, not to our meteorologist, John Patrick, but Debra, your thoughts on what Barbara has to say there.
Barbara's right. War is incredibly carbon emitting, and the destruction that we're seeing in Ukraine right now, for example, is doing, in addition to harming humans, it's harming the planet. I hope that peace comes to the people of Ukraine soon, and when it does, they will ask to rebuild, and they will have the right to ask for that, and the rebuilding too will be carbon emitting. So we just keep getting back to this notion of not having sort of a grand plan for how we rebuild, whether it's rebuilding after war, rebuilding after hurricane. But among the many reasons to not want war, one of them would certainly be its impact on our climate.
Let me just finally come back to you, John Patrick. We're here in Fort Myers. You've just been through a major hurricane. Do people here feel like now that was somebody called it a 500-year storm? Is it a 500-year storm, Ian?
I wouldn't say a 500-year storm. I mean, we've had Andrew, we've had Michael. Those are all very catastrophic storms as well. I mean, for Southwest Florida, Ian was the worst for us, in modern times, partially because we're built up much more now than we were back a half a century or a century ago. And so now when a storm comes through, you're going to have much more damage and, unfortunately, like we saw here, much more loss of life just because more people are living here than they used to in prior years.
So do people feel like they just got through the really bad one and they're going to have a little while before another one, or that the climate has changed and now they're going to be dealing with this every couple of years?
Yeah. You always hope that you don't have one for a long time. I mean, we went from Hurricane Donna back in 1960. That one was a direct hit on Marco Island. And we really went, if memory serves me right, we went all the way to Hurricane Charlie in 2004 before we had another really catastrophic direct hit here in Southwest Florida. Now, since Charlie, then we had Wilma, then we had Irma, and now we've had Ian. Part of that is luck, but, part of that is climate change with these stronger storms nowadays, too.
All right. Well, we have time for one more thing here, and it's the fun part. The whole show has been fun, but now we got Anthony Valadez. So, Anthony, Tell us what's going on.
Well, it's not just fun. It's the infamous needle drop. Here's what we are going to do. I'm sitting in front of a turntable, and I broke out this special record from Gainesville, Florida's very own, and I'm going to place the needle in the middle of the record, and you have to tell me who this artist is. Okay, John, Debra, and Jeremy, are you all ready to play?
We're ready. Are you guys ready?
All right, we're ready.
All right.
All right, here we go.
Down the road, there's somewhere.
Tom Petty.
I gotta
go. John Patrick wins. Tom Petty of Florida, right?
Gainesville, yeah.
Gainesville.
I'm not even a Florida Gator. I went to
right.
Mississippi State, and I knew that.
All right. Well, Anthony, what does he win?
John, you win lots of love and good energy.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
There you go.
I will take it and run with it.
All right. ABC 7 meteorologist John Patrick, Debra Javeline of Notre Dame, and DJ Anthony Valadez. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're going to be live from KCUR in Kansas City, Missouri next week, asking you what is an area where you disagree with the political party you affiliate with. Our number, 844-4MIDDLE. We're also at listentothemiddle.com. If you love the show, tell your public radio station, subscribe to our podcast, The Middle with Jeremy Hobson. This is brought to you by Long Nook Media, produced by Alex Ashlock, John Barth, Sam Burmistad, Cece Fadape, Lisa Napoli, and Harrison Patino. Our technical director is Richard Chinqui here at WGCU. Thanks also to Kevin Trueblood, Jared Gonzalez, Amy Schumacher, and Corey Lewis. Our theme music composed by Andrew Haig. Our partner, WILL, Jason Croft and Lily Duncanson. I'm Jeremy Hobson. Talk to you next Wednesday from Kansas City.
Over the last couple years, didn't we learn that the folding chair was invented by Black people because of what happened in Alabama?
The Montgomery Brawl.
This Black History Month, the podcast Selective Ignorance with Mandy B unpacks Black history and culture with comedy, clarity, and conversations that shake the status quo. The Crown Act in New York was signed in July of 2019, and that is a bill that was passed to prohibit discrimination based on hairstyles associated with race. To hear this and more, listen to Selective Ignorance with Mandy B from the Black Effect Podcast Network on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
1969. Malcolm and Martin are gone. America is in crisis. And at Morehouse College, the students make their move.
These students, including a young Samuel L. Jackson, locked up the members of the Board of Trustees, including Martin Luther King Sr. It's the true story of protest and rebellion in Black American history that you'll never forget. I'm Hans Charles.
I'm Menelik Lumumba.
Listen to The A Building on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Saturday, May 2nd, country's biggest stars will be in Austin, Texas at our 2026 iHeart Country Festival presented by Capital One. Tickets are on sale now. Get yours before they sell out at Ticketmaster.com. That's Ticketmaster.com.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed Human.